All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of Motivational Monday. Me and Rick been slacking a bit. We've just been really busy with some other stuff, so we're getting back in the flow here. We're going to talk about something that I really love this. I love this engine. I just really love it. And this thing is not impressive looking, right? Like, it's really dirty right now, and honestly, when it was in the car, it was always really dirty. Factory valve covers on this deal. It's a stock block engine. It has a factory crankshaft inside of there. Still a hydraulic roller. Just rusty old 6.0 truck block. And again, just super unimpressive looking. If this motor was sitting in our shop and like there's a few other engines in here right now. I think we got a billet Hemi somewhere and got the other big block out of Charlie. There's a billet small block Ford up there. So there's just like all these really cool engines. You would walk right by this thing. But let me tell you why I love this motor. So before Brad and I started the shop, I had this motor built. A guy named Jimmy Mullen put it together for me. He just did the bottom end, which was, he built the short block for me. And at the time, I was putting it in a street car, and I wanted a de-stroke 6 liters. So what that was, I read this article that I really liked the reason why that worked well. So this motor is 330 cubic inch. It's a 6.0 block, and then it has a factory 4.8 crankshaft. So that made it like 330 inch. So this motor, the original block I bought off Craigslist for like $200. I took that block and I bought the crank off eBay for like 150. And I took that block and the crank and I took it to Jimmy, and Jimmy put the short block together. And that was, so it had Wiseco pistons in it, just a Comstar rod, and then that factory crank. He built the complete short block for like $2,800, like really cheap. And then Brad and I started the shop. And when you're starting a business, if you've never done that, it's very taxing and you need money. So I sold this engine, the short block, to my buddy Darren. And Darren really just did it honestly to help me out. He kind of gave me Darren's he's such a great dude. So he bought the motor from me. Then fast forward a few years later, when the shop's kicking, Brad and I are putting together our white SN95 Mustang, and we need a motor. And Darren still had this engine, so he sold it back to me for exactly what he paid me for it. So he more or less gave me like an interest-free loan, right? That's how good of a friend he was. I don't think when he bought it, I don't think he ever planned to use it. I think he planned to hold it for me until I was ready to have it back. Yeah, man, if you don't have people like that in your life, I'm sorry. Gosh, he's such a good dude. I could do a whole Motivational Monday on Darren. But anyway, we get the motor back. We're going to put it in our 235 car, and we're going to race nationally. So when this motor was built, that was never a thought, right? It was just a street car engine. So Brad went back through the short block, kind of checked some stuff out. Tony Bischoff did a set of just stock casting cylinder heads for it. So I forget what number they were. I think they were 243s or something. So Bischoff just did their CNC port, and then put them all back together with stock valves. We did the Holley high ram. Brad ported it and everything to match the cylinder heads. He did all that himself. So at this point, this engine, we had somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 in it. So that might be a little light, but somewhere in that neighborhood, this motor was $5,000. And we were going to take it and we were going to run limited 235 nationally, okay? So this motor honestly had no business doing that, right? We go to Georgia. I've done a Motivational Monday on that where we wrecked the car and all this stuff happened. And it ran pretty good. So with a 76 millimeter turbo at 3,400 pounds, this engine went like 532 or 530 532 or 528, something around there that first time. Brad would know exactly, but I'm more of an approximate. So anyway, it ran pretty good. And at the time, the class, the fastest guys were running like 5.0s to 5.10s. So we were, first time out, we're pretty close, right? Well, then we get the car back together and we go to Bowling Green, and the air's really good, but it's just stuck at that like high, like 520 deal. And not everybody, but like Martin Conley racing with us, he's in 235 and he's like the top of the field, and he's running like 5.0s and smoking everybody. And he's like, we just got to get you a better engine. Like, this engine sucks. Like, he kept telling me that. And I was like, Martin, well, the money for that better engine, it just doesn't exist. This $5,000 engine, that's all we have, man. So we got back to the pits, and Brad's just scoping the data, looking at it, and he's like, man, that converter's really too tight. There's some other things. We cut a hole in the front bumper, and we're just all thrashing on this thing at the racetrack. I remember we put it up on the trans brake like 5 times before we went out to like loosen the torque converter up. And we go out for like the Friday night qualifying session. The air's good. Everybody's there. Nick's there. I don't know, all the boys are there, right? And I let go of the button, and I'm like, dang, this thing, wow, we're flying. I don't know what happened, but we're doing something different. And it went 5.16 that night and put us like number 3 qualifier. You would have thought that we knocked the scoreboard down. Like, the boys were so happy. You would have thought that we won everything. It was so awesome because we picked up this like lot of numbers, right? And we got back to the trailer, and I'll never forget. Martin comes over and he's like, man, he said, before you went down the racetrack, I was sitting in my car and I was thinking about how we were going to get you a new motor. He's like, we'll call Tony, we'll maybe bargain, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, I was thinking of how we were going to replace this engine. And based off a few things, the $5,000 engine was now in the ballpark of running with these guys. And we had a great season, man. I think we finished 4th in the points. It was a great season. Well, then roll into season 2, right? We still have our old trusty $5,000 piece. But at this point, we got partnered with Brian Tooley and a couple other companies because we were running good. And we did a set of trick flow heads on it. This a 225 CNC port. Tooley did a couple things to that. We were constantly trying camshafts, just a lot of work in this same motor. So it's still got the stock crank, it's still got the Compstar rods in it, and it's still got the same pistons in it. So it's already had a whole season on these parts that most people would consider not great. And I think the fastest we went that year was 5.10s. And that was at 3,400 pounds. They made some rule changes. We used a different turbocharger, which was Jose from Force Inductions did a S476 for us. So it was just a Borg Warner based turbo, and we got to be lighter. I think right around 3,200 pounds. This baby went out the first race, and we went 5.00 with an S476 at 3,200 pounds or 3,250, something like that. And man, we had a player, and everybody would have passed this engine by, right? Like, it wouldn't have been what you would have picked to compete nationally. And we ended up winning the championship that year with the motor that nobody wanted. And then we put a bigger turbo on it, and we raced locally. And this engine ended up going a 445, which, if you look at it, you would never think that it would go a 445 at 3,000 pounds. I mean, look at it. And then to top it all off, which is really cool, Brad and I actually, we wanted to run Ultra Street, but we didn't think we had enough engine, right? Like, we're like, we need a better motor to run Ultra Street. Well, we started racing the Bad Penny, and it had a similar combo to it. And we went 460s with it. Well, then we ended up hanging a rod out of that motor that was in that car. We went back. We got old Trusty. I named him King David, and I'll get to that in a minute. But this motor in Otter Street ended up going a 458 in that car, which is like, if you follow this stuff, like, this is not the motor that you would pick. I love this thing. I do, man. And it's got over 200 runs on it. Probably, I don't know. I don't know how many. It's got well over 200. Still the same crank, still the same crappy rods, still the off the shelf stuff. And what I'm getting at is, like, you know, there's a story in the Bible. The reason I call this motor King David is, in the Bible, King David ended up being the king of Israel. And, like, there's a really funny story. It's in 1 Samuel. And it's talking about back then they chose the king, right? So a prophet would come and he would choose the king, and they knew that it was going to be one of this guy's sons. This guy had 8 sons, okay? And 8 of them. And when the prophet came to choose the king, the guy brought 7 sons out. He brought 7. He had 8, but he brought 7 out because he brought the ones that he thought should be king. And what ended up happening, long story short, this is in 1 Samuel 16, if you want to go back and read it, is the prophet passed all those by, and he's like, there's got to be another one. And the guy's like, well, actually there is. He's my youngest son, and he's out working in the field. And he's like, okay, well, bring that son in. And that's the son that he picked. He picked the one that everybody else passed by because he saw the potential within him. And, you know, for you, like, if you feel like this motor, right, like, don't look that great, and it really don't even have the right pieces. But I know it's just an engine, but this motor's got a lot of heart, man. And it showed up. And we kept picking at it and you know, just finding different things and just perfecting the combo and working with what we had. And I think that's a thing that a lot of people miss in life and in racing, is we get into this point of, like, you know, man, it would really been nice to have, you know, a complete Bischoff engine. We could do it if we had that Bischoff motor. We could do it if that yellow car's got a Bennett engine in it. We could do it if we had that. If you're, you know, we could do it if we had that Proline Hemi. But that's not what was in our hands. What we had here was King David. We had our $5,000 engine. And that's all that we had. And we kept working on it and working on it. And we tried to find the untapped potential within. And for you, don't look at the things that you don't have. Look at the things that you have and what tools are in your hands. And you'll be surprised that if you really fine-tune those tools that you have, you won't believe where it will take you. And that's the lesson of this motor, is everybody would have passed it by. This isn't the first pick. This is not even the second pick. It's way down. But because it's what we had, we made it work. So look at your life. Look at the things you have, racing and otherwise. Just use what you got. We love you. Hope you get something from this. We'll see you later.